His brother killed a man, and she paid for it with her life. Not with prison, not with money, with her body, her future, her name. Handed over at a tribal council meeting to the family of the man her brother-in-law murdered, as a living, breathing substitute for justice. She didn't commit the crime. She didn't know the victim. She was 19 years old, and her only qualification for this sentence was that she was female and she was available. Before we get to what happens to a woman inside a Swara marriage, and what Pakistan's own Supreme Court said about the men who arranged them, understand what you are actually looking at. This is not a practice from the medieval period. This is not something that happens in isolated cases that nobody knows about. In 2023, Pakistani courts were still processing Swara cases. Girls as young as 5 have been handed over under this system, and the council of men who arranged these transactions has never once asked the girl for her consent. Because her consent is not part of the process. She is not a participant in the negotiation. She is the currency it produces. Stay with this, because the detail that human rights investigators keep returning to, the one that makes this different from every other forced marriage system, is that the girl is given specifically to the family of the murder victim. She does not just lose her freedom, she goes to live with the people who have the most reason in the world to hate her family. And what happens to her inside that house has been documented, and it is not peace. To understand Swara, you need to understand the Jirga. A Jirga is a council of tribal elders operating completely outside the official legal system in rural and tribal areas of Pakistan and Afghanistan. When a serious crime occurs, particularly murder, the Jirga convenes. Both families appear before the council. Evidence is presented. The elders deliberate, and then they deliver a verdict that both families are expected to accept without appeal. The official legal system exists in theory. In practice, in the tribal belt regions along the Pakistan-Afghanistan border and in rural areas of Punjab and Khyber, Pakhtunkhwa, the Jirga's word carries more authority than any court in Islamabad. Challenging a Jirga verdict means risking complete expulsion from the community. In a region where survival depends on community, that threat is not abstract. It is existential. When a Jirga decides that a murder requires a Swara settlement, it is following a logic that is centuries old. A blood feud between two families left unresolved produces cycles of retaliatory killing that can continue for generations. The elders believe that the only way to permanently bind two feuding families together and stop the cycle of revenge is to create a blood tie between them, a marriage. Specifically, a marriage where a girl from the killer's family is sent to live with the victim's family. The theory is that shared family bonds prevent further violence. That once the victim's family has a daughter-in-law from the offender's family living in their home, the feud becomes impossible to continue. The reality of what happens to that daughter-in-law inside the home of the people who despise everything she represents has been documented by Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and the United Nations, and it bears no resemblance to the theory. Pakistan criminalized Swara in 2004. The Criminal Law Amendment Act made giving a woman in marriage to settle a dispute a punishable offense carrying up to 10 years imprisonment. Pakistan's federal Shariat court has ruled that Swara is un-Islamic. The Supreme Court has ruled that jirgas have no constitutional authority to operate as parallel legal systems. The condemnation from every legitimate institution in Pakistan, legal, religious, and governmental, is total and documented. And yet in 2008, a jirga in Khyber, Pakhtunkhwa, handed over 3 girls, the youngest of them 5 years old, to settle a murder case. In 2012, Pakistani media documented multiple Swara cases in Punjab. In 2019, human rights organizations recorded cases in which girls were handed over under Swara arrangements in direct defiance of court orders that had ruled the practice illegal. The gap between the law and the reality is not a gap, it is a canyon. And the girls falling into it are falling in silence because reporting a jirga verdict to the police in a community where the jirga holds real power is not a realistic option for most families. The police are far away, the elders are next door. The community pressure is immediate and total. A human rights lawyer who has represented Swara victims in Pakistani courts described it this way: "The law gives these women a right that the social reality makes completely inaccessible. Having a right and being able to exercise that right are two entirely different things. And in the communities where Swara persists, the distance between those two things is where these women's lives disappear." She is 19 when the Jirga delivers its decision. Her cousin was murdered by a man from the neighboring family. Her family's grief is real and raw and documented in the way that grief always is. In the faces of the people who cannot eat, cannot sleep, cannot stop replaying the moment the news arrived. The Jirga convenes. The elders deliberate for 3 days. And when they emerge with their verdict, it is not the killer who pays. He has fled. He is not present. The debt falls instead on the family he left behind. And the currency the Jirga selects is her, she is told on a Thursday. Her father's face is stone when he explains it. There will be peace. She is the price of that peace. She will marry the brother of the man who killed her cousin. She will move into his family's home. She will cook their food, clean their house, and live every day surrounded by people who see her not as a wife, but as a reminder of what her family's violence cost them. She does not sleep that night, not because she is crying, because she is beyond crying. She is sitting in the specific silence of someone who has just understood that the life they were building no longer exists, and the life replacing it was designed by men who never once asked what she wanted. She is not unusual. She is not an extreme case. She is Tuesday in the Swara system. The wedding has no celebration, no music, no color. It is a transaction performed in the language of ritual because ritual makes transactions feel inevitable. She moves into his family's home carrying almost nothing. The house is full of people who lost someone they loved to her family's violence. She is surrounded daily by that grief and by its transformation into something harder and colder. Contempt. Punishment delivered through silence, through refusal, through the specific cruelty of people who have been told by tradition that she owes them something she can never fully repay. Survivors of Swara marriages documented by human rights organizations describe lives of domestic servitude indistinguishable from slavery, unpaid labor, physical abuse, total isolation from their families of origin, children born into the same household that treats their mother as property. The peace the Jirga promised is purchased entirely on her account. The two families stop fighting. She absorbs the residue of everything that fighting produced. This is what the elders mean when they call it social equilibrium. One person's complete destruction distributed evenly enough across two families that the violence stops. The women who have escaped Swara marriages and reached human rights organizations tell consistent stories. The details change. The structure does not. A crime committed by a man. A verdict delivered by men. A sentence served by a woman who had nothing to do with either. Pakistani courts have freed Swara victims. Activists have reached women inside these marriages and provided legal support that produced actual prosecutions. The number of documented cases where men have been imprisoned for arranging Swara settlements is growing, slowly, insufficiently, but growing. Each prosecution creates a record. Each record makes the next Jirga slightly less certain that their verdict will go unchallenged. But the prosecutions are measured in dozens. The cases are measured in thousands. And the girls being handed over at tribal councils right now, this month, this week, are not waiting for the gap between those two numbers to close. They are living inside it. Stories like this one survive in silence because most of the world never hears them. If this changed something in you, subscribe now. Share this video with one person who has never heard the word Swara. Awareness does not free these women on its own, but silence guarantees that nothing changes.